In the quiet neighborhood of Verona, Lila stepped into her backyard one misty morning and saw something that stopped her in her tracks. A dog, dark as night and clearly without a home, was standing still near her garden shed. It stared at her with an intense, almost serious gaze. Lila's curiosity kicked in, and she walked closer. But then she noticed what was in the dog's mouth. Her stomach dropped, her knees went weak, and everything around her faded as she passed out. Whatever it was, it shook her more than anything she'd ever seen. When Lila came to, everything felt strange. She was still trying to wrap her head around what she'd seen that dog carry into her yard. It had felt unreal at the time, but deep down she knew it had been real. Something about it stuck with her. She felt like it meant something, and she couldn't shake the feeling. She had to find that dog again. She wasn't going to stop until she did. Over the next few days, Lila did all she could to find the dog. She searched the streets, checked nearby parks, even asked neighbors. But it was like the dog had disappeared. Just when she was about to give up, it came back. Out of nowhere, there it was, standing in her garden again. Lila froze. There was no mistake. She knew it was the same dog. And she had a feeling she knew why it had returned. Lila moved slowly, careful not to scare it away like before. Her heart was pounding. If she lost the chance again, she wasn't sure she could forgive herself. But what she didn't know was that this moment would take a turn she never expected. What exactly had that dog been holding in its mouth? What had shocked her so deeply? And why had it come back to her garden? Early mornings were always Lila's favorite. Her husband had already left for work, and the kids were still fast asleep. She enjoyed her coffee in peace, staring out the window as the sky slowly turned from gray to soft blue. The only sound was birds chirping here and there, just waking up. These were the quiet moments she treasured, before the chaos of the day kicked in. She still had an hour before the morning rush began. Once the kids were up, it was nonstop. She'd have to break up their squabbles, dig through laundry for her son's pants, track down her daughter's missing shirt, get them to eat something, and somehow make it to the car by 8 a.m. It was always a bit of a circus. So, every morning, Lila made sure to be as quiet as possible. She didn't want to wake anyone and lose her calm before it was time. She loved her family more than anything, but these early hours were her little pocket of peace, and she held on to them tight. So far, this morning felt just like all the others. She had read a few pages from a book she recently started and picked out what she'd wear. There were several meetings at work today, and she wanted to look put together. When she noticed there were still 20 minutes left, she grabbed the watering can and headed outside to tend to the backyard plants. Not expecting anything out of the ordinary, Lila filled the watering can and pushed open the kitchen door to the garden. She walked over to the flower beds, humming softly as she watered the plants. Since she was already there, she picked off a few dead leaves and trimmed anything that looked overgrown. That's when she saw it. A dog was in her garden. It stood near the shed, tucked in the corner, completely still. It didn't move a muscle, just stared straight at her. Lila stared back. It was a fairly big dog, and from the way it looked, she guessed it didn't have an owner. Lila had always loved animals, but she knew stray dogs could sometimes be unpredictable, so she decided to be careful. "Hey there, buddy. What are you doing here?" she said gently, her voice calm and soft. The dog didn't come closer, but its tail started wagging slowly. That was enough for Lila. It didn't seem aggressive. As she began walking toward it, she noticed something hanging from its mouth, though she couldn't quite tell what it was yet. Lila moved in, her heart beating a little faster now, curiosity taking over. The black dog stayed right where it was, watching her calmly. When she reached out a hand, it didn't back away or growl. It seemed like it trusted her. Then her eyes drifted to the thing in its mouth, and she squinted, trying to get a better look. As she got closer, the object came into focus. Her breath hitched. It was something she hadn't seen in ages, but she knew exactly what it was the second she saw it. Her chest tightened as she reached toward the dog, which sat patiently, as if it had brought this thing just for her. In the quiet morning light, she could see it more clearly now. The shock hit her all at once. Her knees gave out, and the garden spun around her. She tried to steady herself, but it was no use. She collapsed onto the grass, the coolness of the dew pressing against her face. The dog didn't move. It just sat nearby, watching silently as Lila slipped into unconsciousness. "Mom! Mom! Wake up!" Noah's voice broke through the stillness a little while later. He was kneeling beside her, gently shaking her shoulder. His face was tight with worry as he tried again. "Mom?" he called, louder this time. Not far off, the dog stayed put, tail swaying slowly. Lila blinked, her eyes adjusting to the sight of Noah's anxious face hovering above her. "Can you get me some water?" she whispered, her voice faint. Noah gave a quick nod and rushed toward the house. Lila sat up carefully, her head foggy. Her mind spun with questions. What happened? Why was she outside and on the ground? Slowly, Lila lifted herself up, brushing dirt off her clothes. She looked down at her arms and legs. Amazingly, there wasn't a single cut or bruise, even after falling like that. She stood slowly, a bit shaky, but mostly fine. The garden was completely still, like nothing unusual had happened at all. Noah came hurrying back with a bottle of water in his hand, worry still written all over his face. "Are you okay?" he asked, eyes scanning her for any sign of injury. Lila took the bottle, gave him a small, grateful nod. "I think so, just a little shaken," she said with a tired smile. Having Noah there grounded her a bit. It reminded her that no matter how strange things got, she wasn't going through it alone. As Lila sipped the water, she tried to figure out how she ended up on the ground. Her thoughts were cloudy, and the details wouldn't come together, until her eyes drifted to the old shed at the edge of the garden. Something clicked. That shed, it was tied to why she came out here in the first place. Maybe it held some clue. She felt a pull to look closer. Walking toward the shed, Lila felt a strange wave of familiarity. That was where she had seen the dog, right there, next to the shed, watching her so silently. But something else had been there too. An object. It looked oddly familiar, though out of place among the flowers and tools. That image had triggered something in her, a memory she couldn't quite reach yet, but it felt important. Lila turned to show Noah where the dog had been, but when she looked back, it had vanished. Not a trace. No paw prints in the dirt, no broken branches or flattened grass. Nothing. It was like the dog had never been there at all. But Lila knew better. She'd seen it. And whatever it had brought, real or not, meant something. The answers were nearby. She was sure of it. She called out for the dog, her voice hopeful. She searched every corner of the garden, waiting for a bark or any sound in return. Lila peeked behind bushes and walked around every tree, her voice getting quieter, more urgent. But the garden stayed still. Finally, with a frustrated sigh, she gave up for now and went back inside, her heart heavy, but still searching for answers. Glancing at the time, she realized she had to rush to get Noah and Carly ready for school. The peaceful morning had flipped into full-speed chaos, toast popping, backpacks missing, and shoes that didn't match. Lila managed it all with the kind of speed only a parent could pull off. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about the dog, even while buttering toast. Worried about driving after passing out earlier, she decided to ask her neighbor for help. She quickly phoned Mr. Thompson, who lived right next door, and explained what had happened. Without hesitation, he said he'd be glad to help. Relieved, Lila got the kids ready, then walked them over. Mr. Thompson met them at his porch with a smile, promising they'd make it on time. Lila thanked him, grateful beyond words. She waved as the car pulled away, watching until it turned the corner. For a moment, her mind shifted from the mystery to appreciation. Mr. Thompson had made her morning easier, and she could breathe a little. Now, with the kids safe and on their way, she turned her thoughts back to the dog and what it might have meant. She decided to retrace her steps one more time. With the house quiet, Lila walked quickly through her yard, then out onto the street, her eyes scanning every fence and alley. She whistled gently, the same way she used to call her childhood pets, hoping the dog might hear her. But nothing. Just silence. With a glance at her watch, she realized she had to leave soon. She gave the street one last look, then turned back home. On the bus ride into work, Lila texted her boss to explain she'd be running late. Something unusual had come up. Her boss replied kindly, letting her know the team was still looking forward to her presentation. Lila read the message, nodded to herself, and took a deep breath. She'd give it her all, no matter how the day had started. Once at work, Lila delivered her presentation smoothly, her words clear and confident. Her co-workers smiled and nodded as she spoke, and by the end, the room was full of quiet applause. But even as she stood there, part of her mind was elsewhere. She kept seeing the dog, standing in her garden, tail gently wagging. Even with the praise around her, she couldn't help but hope the dog would come back. While straightening up her desk, Lila found her thoughts drifting back to the dog. Was it searching for something in her garden? Why had it come to her of all people? And where did it find the strange object it had carried in its mouth? These questions kept circling in her head, like leaves caught in a breeze, impossible to ignore even with all the other things she had to think about. That evening, Lila made herself a cup of tea and settled by the window, stealing glances toward the garden gate. She kept hoping the dog would return. The morning's events still weighed heavily on her mind. As the sky grew darker and the house fell into its evening rhythm, she stayed alert, watching in quiet hope for a sign that might never come. Christopher had been curious too, but he could tell the whole situation was starting to wear on Lila. Wanting to help her relax, he suggested a quiet night in with a movie. It worked, at least for a little while. Lila finally let go of the day's worries and enjoyed the break. Meanwhile, Noah barely blinked, sitting by the living room window and watching for any movement outside. In the middle of their movie night, Noah suddenly yelled that he saw the dog. The calm was gone in an instant. Startled, Lila and Christopher jumped up, knocking over a bowl of popcorn. Noah's eyes were wide as he pointed toward the garden, his nose almost touching the glass. The movie kept playing in the background, but none of them were paying attention anymore. They all rushed to the door. When they stepped outside, the garden was still. They were too late. The dog had already vanished into the night. The cool air brushed past them, and the only sound was the rustling of leaves. Lila and Christopher scanned every shadow, hoping to catch even a glimpse. But there was nothing. They stood there for a while, disappointed and unsure of what else to do. As they slowly walked back toward the house, they realized that their sudden rush and Noah's loud shout had probably scared the dog away. Christopher scratched the back of his neck, wondering aloud what they should have done differently. Lila reassured him, saying they just needed to be more careful next time. Noah, a bit sheepish, promised to stay quiet if they saw the dog again. They left the door open just a crack, just in case. Once they were inside, Christopher had an idea. He suggested setting up a security camera in the backyard to keep an eye out for the dog. "It'll be our little mission," he said, smiling. That way, they could see it without chasing it away. Lila liked the plan, and Noah lit up at the idea of helping. They agreed to install it the next day. Wanting to learn more about the dog and why it had come, Lila was fully on board. The next day, she and Christopher spent the afternoon adjusting the camera and making sure it covered the whole yard. Christopher climbed the ladder while Lila guided him. "A little to the left. There." "Perfect," she called out. Once everything was in place, they headed back inside to test the setup. Lila opened her laptop and pulled up the video feed. The picture was clear, just like they hoped. "This has to work," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. Then they sat there together for a while, just watching the screen, waiting quietly. To help draw the dog in, Lila placed a bowl of water and some food near the shed. Every now and then she peeked through the curtains, checking if anything had been touched. Christopher kept his eyes on the live feed, ready to let Lila know if anything moved. They had their plan in place, and now all they could do was wait. They waited for the dog to come back, hopeful that the food and water might tempt it out. Hours turned into days. Lila and Christopher took turns watching the live camera feed, barely speaking. The silence was filled with the quiet hum of the computer and the tension of waiting. The garden stayed still. The bowls stayed full. But they kept believing. "It'll show up," Christopher said to Lila now and then, though he wasn't so sure anymore. Each day brought more of the same. No dog, no movement, nothing. Lila and Christopher fast-forwarded through endless hours of footage, always hoping for something, anything. The food was starting to rot, and the water bowl was full of leaves. Lila thought about giving up, but something inside her kept her going. "Just a few more days," she whispered, not quite ready to let go of the mystery. Then, just when she was about to stop trying, the dog came back. Lila spotted it on the camera, pacing near the shed with its eyes locked on the door. It was clear. Something about that shed had drawn it here. Lila stared at the screen, shocked and curious. Could the dog really know what was in there? She stepped outside quietly, hoping not to scare it off. She moved slowly, speaking softly to calm the dog. "It's okay," she murmured, voice low and kind. The dog twitched its ears, but didn't run. It just stood there, watching her carefully. Lila held out her hand, not too close, just enough to show she meant no harm. Her eyes searched the dog's, waiting for some small sign of trust. The dog didn't move, but clung to something in its mouth, a stuffed toy. Not just any toy, an old panda. Lila froze. She knew that toy. She knew it too well. It had been lost years ago. Somehow, this dog had brought it back to her. And now it all made sense. This toy was what had drawn the dog here, right to the shed. Lila's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the shed door. She unlocked it and stepped back, giving the dog space. Her heart pounded. The dog stood firm, still watching her, holding the panda tightly. It didn't step forward just yet, but Lila had a feeling it wanted to. That's what it came for. She was sure of it. Her calm voice and steady movements slowly gave the dog courage. Its tail wagged slightly, unsure but hopeful. It stepped closer to the shed, sniffing around the doorframe, peeking into the dim space. Lila didn't move. Then the dog looked at her one last time, almost like asking for permission, before walking inside, nose low to the ground, ready to follow the scent. Inside, the shed was filled with old memories. Dusty boxes, unused tools, forgotten furniture. The dog moved like it knew where to go. Its nose twitched constantly, guiding it through the maze of things. It paused here and there, checking scents, inspecting corners. Then its ears perked up. Something had caught its attention. As it moved deeper, the dog became more focused, zigzagging through the clutter with purpose. Every few steps, it stopped to sniff harder or scratch gently at the floor. Lila stayed by the door, watching, a mix of amusement and curiosity on her face. She already had a pretty good idea what the dog was searching for. Eventually, the dog's search brought it to a large box tucked in the corner, its lid slightly open. The dog pawed at it, whining softly when it couldn't budge the heavy top any further. It turned to Lila with a quiet urgency in its eyes, clearly asking for her help. She didn't hesitate, stepping forward, ready to see what was inside this box that seemed so important. With Lila's help, the lid creaked open. The dog dove in almost instantly, tail wagging like crazy, and came out with something gently held in its mouth. Lila crouched down as it approached, placing the item at her feet with such pride as if it had found treasure. She picked it up, her breath catching as she realized what it was, while the dog bounced around happily, excited by her reaction. Lila held out her hand, fingers slightly shaking. The dog stepped forward slowly, tail wagging with gentle trust. Then, just like that, it gave her hand a soft lick. That simple moment sealed something between them. They were outside, the sun peeking through the leaves, casting a warm glow over the dog's eyes and Lila's small smile. Somehow, in that quiet space, they both felt understood. This dog had wandered far, through streets, across sidewalks, weaving past people and cars, driven by something it couldn't explain. All that searching had brought it here, to Lila's backyard. Now, sitting peacefully at her feet, the journey made sense. It felt like it was always meant to end right here. That little panda toy wasn't just any stuffed animal. It had belonged to Max, Lila's old dog, the one they had loved so much and missed even more. That toy had seen years of play and comfort, and now it had come back to her, carried gently in the mouth of another dog. The box in the shed held Max's old things, and somehow this dog had followed the scent right to them. After Max passed, the family had donated the panda to a nearby shelter, hoping it might bring comfort to another dog. They never imagined it would find its way back to them. Somehow it had. The panda's return didn't need an explanation. To Lila, it felt like a quiet sign, a small reminder that the bond with Max was still there. Some connections don't fade. They just wait. Watching the dog roll on the grass with the panda, Lila laughed out loud for the first time in what felt like forever. It was a deep, real laugh, the kind that lightens something inside you. This new dog, this unexpected friend, had already started to fill a space she thought would always stay empty. Life had handed her something special, and she wasn't about to let it go. That afternoon was full of light and laughter. Lila and the dog played fetch, took turns with a frisbee, and raced around the backyard like old friends. When they finally stopped, both tired and happy, they lay in the grass together. The dog rested its head on her lap, and she stroked its fur gently, her eyes on the setting sun, feeling strangely at peace. And then Lila made a decision. She opened the kitchen door wide, leaving it open like an invitation. She showed the dog around the house, setting up a cozy bed in the corner of the living room and filling a bowl with water. The dog sniffed every corner, took its time, and finally curled up in the bed with a soft sigh, glancing up at Lila with calm, trusting eyes. A trip to the vet came next, where the dog was declared perfectly healthy. While Lila filled out some paperwork, the dog happily explored the exam room, sniffing around and wagging its tail at the friendly staff. After the checkup, the vet gave the dog a treat and a gentle pat on the head. Just like that, another friendship was formed. It turned into a small celebration when Lila and her family signed the adoption papers, officially making the dog part of their lives. They even had a little party, complete with a dog-safe cake. Wearing a brand-new collar with a tag that had its name, the dog wandered happily between family members, soaking in the love and attention. The dog's arrival brought fresh energy into the home. Every evening was now filled with games, new tricks, and long walks. The house felt fuller, the air brighter, like the start of something exciting. Lila could feel the bond growing between them, a quiet promise of fun days and warm memories ahead. The dog made itself right at home, running through the house like it had always belonged there. It didn't take long before it curled up on the couch beside them, nestling in like family. The sounds of laughter, happy barks, and soft paws on the floor filled the rooms, wrapping the house in joy. One afternoon, Lila watched the dog chasing Max's old toys across the yard. It was such a simple sight, but it made her heart feel light again. The dog had no idea how much those toys had meant, but its joy made the memories feel sweeter. For a moment, everything felt just like it used to. As Lila sat quietly, watching the dog play, a sense of peace came over her. Life was moving forward. They were making new memories, even as they held on to the old ones. This new friend hadn't replaced Max, but had brought comfort in a way Lila hadn't expected, connecting the past with the present. In the evenings, the family often found themselves sharing stories about Max, telling them aloud with the dog nearby. Sometimes they laughed, sometimes they cried, but it felt good. The dog would tilt its head, listening, quietly becoming part of the story, like it had always been there, a gentle presence among familiar memories. Lila came to see that some of life's best moments arrive when you least expect them. This dog, once a stranger at the shed, was now family. It reminded her that even after loss, life can surprise you with joy. And in that joy, there's always room for healing, love, and the beginning of something new. Thank you for watching this story come to life. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming moments. Every view and comment helps us bring more stories like this to you. See you in the next one. You in the